You're sitting at your kitchen table on day 10 after the collapse, doing calorie math on the back of an old bill. You've got cans stacked, water stored, maybe even a little smug satisfaction that you're not out there in the chaos. You think the hardest part was the first 3 days. But let me ask you something. What happens when the world outside your windows realizes you're the one house that didn't run out? What happens when people stop hoping the trucks are coming back and start hunting for whoever still has full shelves? That's not a Hollywood firefight question. That's a math problem with teeth. Because here's the dark little secret about collapse that no one wants to admit. Most preppers don't lose their advantage on day 1 when the lights go out. They lose it around day 10, when their own humanity turns their house into a free community pantry. I'm not talking about looters kicking in your door. I'm talking about you opening it. I'm talking about the moment your planning, your sacrifice, your years of grinding quietly suddenly become our food, our fuel, our responsibility. Because you didn't see the day 10 trap coming. Today I'm going to show you the post-breakdown blunder that cancels all your stockpiling. Not theory, not fantasy. The exact psychological and logistical ambush that hits in the second week when the adrenaline wears off and the begging starts. And I'm going to give you the tools to keep your humanity without committing survival suicide. Forget Mad Max. Forget zombie fantasies. That's not what kills prepared people first. What kills them is nostalgia, guilt, and the craving to feel like a good neighbor when the system stops enforcing limits for you. The danger isn't that you'll become a monster. It's that you'll try too hard not to. Before we get tactical, here's the deal. Most people will keep scrolling because they don't want to think about saying no to hungry faces. You're not most people. If you want to be in the tiny fraction that actually survives the second week, hit subscribe, drop a comment with what your biggest post-collapse fear really is, and then come right back. Because this next part decides whether your stockpile lasts months or 10 miserable days. Let's rewind and map the first 2 weeks, because the day 10 danger doesn't come out of nowhere. Days 1 to 3 are shock and scramble. People looting stores, standing in insane lines, refreshing dead phones like addicts. Days 4 to 7 are the hangover. Cupboards thinning, tempers short, everyone still telling themselves, someone's coming to fix this. You, if you prepped even halfway decently, are riding that out. You're rationing a little, counting calories, but your world hasn't crashed yet. You're tired, you're stressed, but you're not desperate. Not yet. The real pivot is days 8 to 14, when the experiment becomes reality. By day 8, the city noise has changed. Less traffic, more shouting, fewer sirens, more distant bangs you can't explain. The sound of generators fades house by house as fuel runs out, and nighttime gets dark in a way modern humans have never met before. Water pressure is unreliable or gone in whole chunks of the grid. Trash collection stopped a week ago, so you've got rotting bags in alleys and behind restaurants. People who thought they'd wait it out are now moving, walking, knocking, looking for Plan B. And that's where you appear on their mental map. Here's what I know with absolute certainty. On or around day 10, someone is going to knock on your door. It might be a neighbor, a coworker, a kid from down the street, or a stranger who heard you might still have supplies. They won't look like raiders. They'll look like people you feel morally wired to help. And this is where the catastrophic blunder happens. The mistake isn't helping someone. The mistake is turning your survival plan into an open-ended relief operation with no math, no limits, and no operational security. Most people will do exactly that because they never rehearsed what a boundary actually looks like when everyone is hungry. Let me paint you a picture. You prepped enough food for 4 people for 6 months, roughly 4 people, x 180 days, x 2,000 calories. That's 1,240,000 calories sitting in your home in various forms. That sounds massive, until 10 more people start temporarily eating with you. Add 10 adults and teens and you're now feeding 14 mouths. Same pile of calories, bigger fire. Your 6 months just became about 6 weeks, and that's if everyone actually sticks to rationing, which they won't. And you still haven't accounted for the fact that stress, cold, and labor all spike calorie needs. Now layer on water. Maybe you stored 300 gallons. For a disciplined 4-person team at 1 gallon per person per day for drinking and minimal hygiene, that's 75 days of base water. Add 10 more people and you just cut that to around 21 days. Less if it's hot, less if anyone gets sick. See the pattern yet? Whatever you stocked it with a specific number of people in mind. When day 10 hits and you emotionally triple that number without recalculating, you haven't helped them. You've just synchronized your starvation clocks. You just moved your scarcity point forward for everyone. Here's the kicker most people never consider. Increasing the number of mouths doesn't just burn resources faster, it increases your attack surface. More noise, more light, more cooking smells, more people coming and going. You've turned a low-profile survival cell into a visible, noisy, rumor-generating target, and then the social dynamics kick in. At first, everyone is grateful, polite, promising to help out and earn their keep. Give it a week of hunger, bad sleep, and fear, and watch how fast thank you turns into we deserve, and you can't just decide for all of us. You didn't build a community. You accidentally elected yourself the under-resourced mayor of a refugee camp. Let me give you a simple rule. Logistics before feelings. Feelings matter, we're not robots, but logistics is gravity. You don't argue with gravity. Before you open that door, you need a hard, cold process in your head, because in the moment, your emotions will lie to you with every single desperate face you see. So what exactly is the post-breakdown blunder? It's this: turning your stockpile into the neighborhood solution without pre-planned limits, while broadcasting your resource advantage and doing it at the exact moment when the outside world has realized there is no quick rescue coming. I call it the Day 10 hospitality trap. Sounds nice. It kills you slow. They'll remember if I say no, you tell yourself. We'll figure it out together, you tell yourself. We have enough, you tell yourself, because the food is still stacked high and the numbers don't feel real yet. That's how smart people walk straight into famine they spent years preparing to avoid. Let's do some dirty math. Say you've got 140,000 calories stored like we talked about. 4 people at 2,800 calories a day, ration tight, is 7,200 calories per day. That's 200 days of food if you're careful, almost 7 months. Add 10 more people and you're burning 25,200 calories a day at that same ration. You're done in about 57 days. And that assumes nobody gets sick, nobody has a physically demanding job, nobody's pregnant, nobody's elderly. Reality? You'll get people who can't pull full weight, people who need more, not less. You'll have kids who don't understand why they can't just have more cereal. Your fantasy egalitarian bunker turns into a moral meat grinder. You know what the unprepared majority will say when you try to tighten rations later? You said we were in this together. You can't suddenly decide to cut my kids' food. You should have thought of that before you invited us. And they'll be right in one brutal way. You did this. You made promises you couldn't support long term. Here's the dark truth. Once you expand your circle, you practically cannot shrink it without conflict. People won't just sigh, nod, and walk back out into a starving world because your Excel brain finally caught up. They'll stay. They'll argue. Some will threaten. Some will leave and talk to others about the stash you're sitting on. So what's the alternative? Lock the door and let everyone die. That's the binary fantasy people use to avoid planning. In reality, your options are more nuanced and much more uncomfortable. Limited help, structured help, anonymous help, or no help beyond your pre-planned circle. But you have to pick before the knock, not after. Start with this question. For how many people did you actually prepare, including realistic add-ons like family who will absolutely show up? Not theory, not, I'd like to help the whole block. I mean real names, faces, and numbers. If you don't know that number, every moral choice you make is a shot in the dark. Let's say your real number is 6. You, partner, 2 kids, plus 2 guaranteed family members. That's your core circle. You design your stockpile, water, medical, and security plan around that number plus a margin. Anyone outside that circle is not automatic entry. They're a separate decision tree with far stricter limits. Now add the second ring. People you might help but cannot permanently support. Maybe that's one elderly neighbor. Maybe it's a single mom and 1 kid. Maybe it's no one. The key is you define capacity now. Not with tears in your eyes and 10 people on your porch. You decide whether your system can handle a limited number of extra bowls. Then there's the third category, anonymous aid. That means help that does not point back to your primary stockpile or location. You stash small caches near community choke points, an alley, a tree line, an abandoned lot. Pre-packed bags with a few days of calories, water purification tabs, maybe a cheap rain poncho. You help without advertising your main vault. Is anonymous aid perfect? No, nothing is. Some caches will get wasted, stolen, or found by people who already had more than you. but it lets you bleed off some moral pressure without dragging strangers through your front door and giving them a tour of tomorrow's meals. It's a pressure valve, not a solution. Now we need to talk OPSEC, operational security, because the Day 10 blunder is as much about signals as it is about sharing. You know what desperate people look for? Light at night, noise, kids laughing, cooking smells. In other words, signs of normalcy. If you're broadcasting normal while the world starves, don't be shocked when the world shows up. Your job isn't to act like you're suffering when you're not. Your job is to make your home look like it's barely hanging on, same as everyone else. That means disciplined light control, cooking at odd hours, minimizing smell, and shutting down loud generators unless absolutely necessary. You're not flexing your success, you're shrinking your signature. Inside the house, you need rules about who talks, what they say, and what stories leave the building. Kids especially will brag without malice. We still have lots of food. We had pancakes this morning. That's not cute in a collapse, that's a beacon. You need age-appropriate scripts and firm boundaries. Let's give you some tactical language for the door. When someone comes knocking and asks if you have food, your default answer should be emotionally honest, but logistically vague. We're barely holding it together, too. We're rationing what little we have. We can't take more people in. None of those are lies if you did your math. They're boundaries. If you choose to give a little, keep it small and portable. A couple of cans, a small bag of rice, a handful of purification tablets. Handed through the door, not with an invitation to step inside and see your entire setup. You are not a tour guide. The moment they see shelves, it becomes, "Why can't you spare more?" Here's a phrase to memorize. This is all we can spare without risking our own kids. Anyone who pushes hard after that is showing you who they are. Compassion doesn't require suicidal generosity. The movies lied to you. Real survival is about brutal trade-offs and living with them. Fear-based decision-making will tell you to cave just this once to every story you hear. That's how you end up feeding 3 extra families just for a few days that quietly never end. If you don't set an exit condition, how long, how much, based on what, there is no end. You traded long-term survival for short-term emotional relief. Remember, you are not the government, you are not a church, you are not a billionaire NGO. You are a small, fragile node with finite resources. The system that used to spread the burden of charity across millions of people is gone. You are not morally obligated to replace it at the cost of your own family's survival. Now let's flip it. But community is a force multiplier. Yes, when it's planned, structured, resourced, and built before the crisis, or very carefully in its early stages. A small, vetted group where everyone brings skills, gear, and commitment can make you stronger. A random swarm of hungry dependents will eat you alive, literally. If you're considering bringing anyone into your core living space, ask 3 questions. What do they add that we need? What do they cost in calories, water, risk, and space? And what happens if this doesn't work out? Can we safely separate later? If you can't answer those, you're not forming a team. You're adopting liabilities. Skills matter more than vibes. A medic with no supplies might be worth it if you've got a deep medical stash. A mechanically minded person with tools might be a lifesaver if you're running generators. A guy with good intentions and no skills, no supplies, and 3 kids is a heartbreak waiting to detonate your pantry. The harsh part? You will absolutely meet people you like, respect, even care about that you still cannot sustainably support. That's where your pre-made rules either hold or crumble. You promised yourself you'd be disciplined. Now the universe asks if you meant it. This is what prepared really means. Less about the buckets and more about the backbone. You also need an internal agreement within your household before any of this kicks off. Who makes final calls at the door? Do you vote? Do you have a veto system? Nothing blows up a survival group faster than someone secretly giving away supplies behind everyone else's back because they felt bad. That's not kindness. That's sabotage. Write it down. I don't care if it's on a napkin or a notebook. Door policy, sharing policy, max extra mouths policy. Put signatures on it if you have to. In week 2, when emotions are screaming, you anchor back to that paper and say, "We already made this decision when we were calm." That's the only version of fair you're going to get. Let's talk about the myth of the instant village. People tell themselves, "We'll band together and it'll all work out." That's like saying, we'll all hop in this car and figure out who's driving once we're on the highway. Governance, rules, discipline, and enforcement don't magically appear because everyone's scared. They take planning. In week 2, everyone is exhausted, hungry, and traumatized. That is the worst possible time to be negotiating basic rules like chores, guard shifts, and rationing tables. Yet that's when most people improvise it. The result is resentment, accusations of favoritism, and eventually, threats. You don't want to invent your social contract while everyone's blood sugar is tanking. If you're serious, you build the framework now. Decide what merit looks like in your group. Decide how you'll handle conflict, dissent, even expulsion. Because here's another dark truth. In a long enough collapse, you will have to remove people from your circle, one way or another. Better to have a procedure than a spontaneous meltdown. None of this makes you invincible. Nothing makes you invincible. Bad luck, bad timing, and bad people can still wreck your plan. But not making the day 10 blunder, that gives you time. Time to adapt, time to plant, time to scavenge smart instead of desperate. Time to actually use what you stored for what you intended. Survival, not a 2-week charity festival. So what do you do tonight, while the grid is still on and your fridge still hums? First, write your real head count. Who are you actually responsible for if everything stops tomorrow? Name them. Anyone beyond that list is a maybe, not a guarantee. That's how you start aligning fantasy with physics. Second, audit your stockpile with that number in mind. How many days at 2,000 calories per person per day do you really have? How many gallons of water? How many rolls of toilet paper and trash bags, which suddenly become disease control tools instead of extras? Treat your home like a tiny logistics cell, not a pantry with feelings. Third, decide on your ring structure. Core circle, possible support, anonymous aid, no entry. Every name you know goes into one of those buckets. If you don't like where someone lands, your options are simple. Increase your capacity now or accept that collapse, you will be saying no later. Pretending it's not a problem is not on the menu. Fourth, start building your OPSEC muscles while it's easy. Practice blackout protocols. Try cooking with minimal smell, lid on, windows closed, exhaust redirected if you can. Learn how loud your generator really is at the property line. Get used to being the gray house, not the glowing one. Finally, have the talk with your household. The real talk. Not the will help everybody fantasy, but the this is what we can do without dying with them reality. Explain the math. Explain the roles. Make sure the first time they hear we can't let them in is not when someone is sobbing on the porch. Here's your choice right now. You can keep imagining yourself as the heroic neighborhood provider who somehow never runs out because the camera cuts away before the math hits. Or you can be the quiet, boring, disciplined planner whose stockpile actually does what it was meant to do. Carry a defined group through the months when everyone else is learning what hunger really means. Open a new tab after this video and write 3 things. Your real head count, your day 10 door policy in 1 sentence, and the first anonymous aid cache you're going to assemble this month. Then close the tab and actually do one of them today. Not tomorrow, today. 99% of people will never do this. They'll keep stacking cans and telling themselves, we'll figure it out. The 1% who think will write the plan. The 0.1% who act will survive long enough for the rest of this channel to matter. Decide which group you're in, subscribe if you're part of that 0.1%, and drop a comment telling me your honest day 10 policy in 1 line. Then go write it down where you'll see it when the knocking starts. Class dismissed. Your move.